not bad. All right, we're rolling on the recording on the computer, so we'll get started. This is our Cleveland Public School regular board meeting in the Media Center on Monday, July 21st, 2025 at 7 p.m. First item is call to order, adoption of the agenda. Any revisions to the agenda? I didn't have any, except that we were going to move 6.1. Yeah, 6.1 preschool wraparound to a discussion item instead of an action item, based on some of the feedback we've had last couple of weeks. So we will still discuss it, but we won't have any action on it tonight specifically for the meeting. So
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda with the change of full business wrap around being changed to a discussion item.
second. Okay, we got a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as amended. In discussion. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, 8.0 community comments. At each board meeting, we allow community comments. We ask that each speaker be limited to no more than 3 minutes, no more than 15 minutes per total subject topic. We've had a lot of community comment over the last few meetings, so we tried to do a little streamlining and add some context for the board. If you looked online, you saw a form to be filled out to just give general information about the name and topic. To kind of help the board collect the information and have it, right after the meeting too, to be able to store it. Also reach out when you contact information to follow up questions on that kind of stuff. So maybe I'm going to go over a few of the decorum items associated with that, because we do kind of a new order that the form was received, either online or we have physical forms, here at the meeting. We are leaving physical forms out for the first few meetings, but are asking that in the future to get them online ahead of time so we can kind of sort through them and get them in order. All comments, should be respectful and civil. No personal attacks, defamatory remarks, or disruptive behavior. We have issues that are contentious within the board and the community, and need to be able to talk about them respectfully. So we want to hold to that standard as we go and as we have these discussions about the rest of our meetings. Board response: the board generally does not engage in the dialogue or respond to comments during the public comment period. Issues requiring further action or discussion may be referred to the appropriate staff person through our chain of command, or placed on a future agenda, or taken into a committee as they see fit or as they work. Personnel or student matters, specific personnel or individual student matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in a public forum. So please refrain from mentioning names, specific details related to topics or issues. A lot of that information is protected by state law. And then again, submissions for these next couple of meetings, we'll take physical in-person submissions, but really are pushing people towards the online forum to collect the data and have the information up front. So just wanted to cover that quick. And we had a few that used the online system, and I see here. So thanks for doing that. And so from that system and in that order, I guess we'll start with Jesse and Lindsay. So go ahead.
Can I go anywhere?
Yeah, just maybe kind of in the front so the camera can pick you up too. Molly's online.
Okay. Thank you for listening to me tonight. I know that I sent you guys an email regarding this upcoming school year preschool program and what may entail with all of that. I just met with Miss Linnell. She couldn't be here tonight, but we kind of went over the numbers for next year. As of now, we have 22 AM students, and I will have 18 in the afternoon, and she will have 16. So we have enough to have an AM for both of us to teach that AM section. So I know there's been talk about taking some of those AM kiddos and moving them to the PM class. It's not something we probably should do. Those of you that have little kids, I know a lot of you guys do. There's a lot that goes into all of that. And, you know, just age wise, a 3-year-old first coming in and being with 4s and 5s, there's just a really age gap there that, we could see some of those things. So just kind of wanted you guys to be in the loop of what was going on here and how I felt about that. The other thing I wanted to kind of talk about is I looked ahead at the agenda. I know that, and I know it's just potential at this point, but as far as next year, possibly the elimination of preschool, I don't think it would be good for our district. We would be the only district in the area that would not have a preschool program. All the other districts around us do have preschool. Another concern we have is that where would those early childhood special ed kids go? We get Help Me Grow referrals, and once we get those kiddos in, you know, where would they go? Where would they get those services from? So just kind of wanted to put a bug in everybody's ear, let you know that, you know, I think that would be very detrimental for our school and for our school district. I think there's other ways we could possibly go around that without eliminating it altogether. So I have ideas for that, but that's for another time. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for reading my emails. I appreciate it. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have one other online submission, Liz. I thought it's our election under locked in. Yeah, go ahead. The next on the list.
Thank you. I'm Liz Thomas, like all of you, a passionate parent, and my husband and I are both we're both alumni of Cleveland. Our oldest is 6, kindergarten going into 1st grade, and the youngest is 4. So we've been looking for preschool. We're currently over at All Saints, and we're open enrolled in Cleveland. So a little bit different than many of you sitting here. I come here tonight in support of the school and also in support of the businesses within the community. We don't survive without each other. So the school is the foundation of Cleveland right now. And without the school, our businesses can't survive either. And same with the businesses also support the school. I'm here to advocate for the wraparound care program. And just a small business case that I put together based on what I know, there are some needs and gaps that haven't been addressed. So the wraparound program supports the preschool program. There's less transitions for children. So like I said, we're currently at All Saints. If we did the afternoon care or afternoon preschool, we'd have to transition to then Anders, and that's just a lot for a 4-year-old to go through. And he would be here with his older sibling then at the end of the day. The parent engagement prior to kindergarten. So this was our first year coming into the school with a kindergartner, and it was very overwhelming to like, where do they go and who are they with? And the school's changed a lot since we've been here. So getting us in and involved in that at that preschool age, I think would help that a lot. And then it also gives parents a choice, right? Like, I think if the school and the wraparound program grow, I believe it provides an opportunity for Anders to also grow. I don't think there's not a pull from one to another. We are supporting each other. The risks of not doing the wraparound program. So we have a decrease in preschoolers. We've got a lost opportunity for revenue for the school. And then our passion burns out, right? We've got a lot of people. Amber's done a great job turning around the program, and there's a lot of passion behind what we're doing. And I'd hate to see that thing die out. And then my last question on risks is like, if we keep tabling this, when is the right opportunity, and who's supporting Amber and the school district in answering the right questions and helping Anders come up, like it's a work together. So how can we come up with a committee to do that? I think in this case, time is of the essence. Again, the passion will burn out. We've got a great reputation with the program compared to where it was a few years ago. And I don't think that we can take too long to decide on this. I'm a professional, corporate professional, so we've seen an evolution across schools, workplaces, communities since COVID. And, there's just a rapid change for maturity. Like, we have to mature all of our processes, and access to information and context and resources is easier now than it ever has been. So I think it should be easy for us to work together and pull in the right advocates and advice. I'll just end here, but the most helpful thing I've heard this year is what got you here won't get you there. So what got Cleveland here was really great, and we've got to shift and pivot and take us to the next place. Business, local communities, and the school.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other community comments? I didn't receive any other forums, but I want to make sure we're open up. All right, seeing none, we can move to our consent agenda items. Approval of regular board minutes, approval of bills and payments, approval of contracts. Quickly, the contracts we have, new contracts, Kayla Wells, for the speech commission, Courtney Peace, elementary teacher, Connor Peace, elementary teacher, Ashley Smith, paraprofessional, included in those contracts. Just as you guys are looking through those, we got our training wheels out tonight. We don't have Scott or Justin. They both had pre-planned vacations, and I think we can survive without them, but we'll miss them. So with that, we're looking for a motion on the consent agenda items.
I'll make that motion for the consent agenda items.
I think Brian's made a motion. I'll second it. Any other discussion about consent agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we can vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries. All right, 5.0 is presentations. We've got Garland with us. They are a group that did an assessment on our roof. Naturally, facilities age, and we've got all different ages of facilities from what projects done over the years and how has it grown, and some priority areas. So we're going to present their findings. So go ahead, introduce yourselves.
Well, thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Is it Julie online?
Molly.
Molly, I'm sorry. Molly, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Thank you. There might be a little lag there, so we'll try to kind of slow through the presentation shortly as it joins. My name is Troy Thompson with the Garland Company. This is Chris. This is the Garland Company. Yeah, Dusty met him a while back here, wanted to do just an overall assessment of your building. Say, hey, what are the condition of the roofs? Where do they sit? Where are our shortcomings? What's the longevity? What does the future look like for the district? So we tried to do that. We've taken that information, put it into a report, which I think maybe some of you have seen, some of you haven't. We're basically here to present findings of that today, kind of show you what's going on around the building. And then there's a lot of recent changes in roofing in the state of Minnesota. If you've heard of the LTFM lobby that's been around for quite a few years, now we had some legislative changes in 2025 itself. So part of what I want to present is about that, what that means to the district. Is there an opportunity? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And there's good and bad about it, I'll say. And then you guys, ultimately at the board, have a decision to make where you would like to take it into the future. So I've got a few points here, kind of put this together to be an open conversation, Q&A. Certainly have certain things I'm going to try to stick to here, but please feel free to stop me as I go through things here. We'll do a brief little overview of our company and who we are. What we see as key success factors in roofing, and we'll point some of that stuff out because as I show you some of the conditions that we found in your building, we'll kind of say, hey, this is where we think things fell short, maybe from past projects, and what we can do to change it so it doesn't happen again in the future. It's kind of what we're always trying to hit those key items. We'll review a lot of your existing conditions and then where we see the future needs to be. We have budgets put together and then discuss the timing of future projects. With the new legislative changes, there's a very short window here of timing as far as taking advantage of that opportunity for what is next summer, summer of 2026, which is fiscal year 2027. So we'll discuss that a little bit as well. Obviously the funding, along with the funding, there's quite a few items. This looks like a lot, but it's really not. There's a narrative that has to go into the Department of Education along with your LTFM budget. We'll discuss that just briefly. What that looks like. There's a few things that we have to do. As far as the Garland Company, I've been with Garland for 25 years here in K-12 education in Minnesota. And it's funny because just talking to Dave Sink, I actually knew, is it your cousin? Cousin Julie Sink, working with her almost 25 years ago on Castle Manderville School. So it kind of comes full circle. We are a full service roof manufacturer. We basically help public school districts, a lot of private schools, higher ed, private manufacturing manage their facility assets roofing wise. Okay, building envelope. We do everything from simple preventative maintenance all the way through long-term planning and complete roof replacement. The main difference between us and a lot of other, maybe of our competitors, is when the roof is all said and done, we actually take financial ownership. We carry the liability. We do have long-term warranty. So when you have, I'm going to say, a financial risk on the line, you look at things through a little different lens, right? You look at things, hey, how do we make this so it does not fail? Do we not have problems? I'll kind of show you a little bit about that as we go through here. Very, very old company, old conservative company. It's been around since 1895. Obviously has evolved a lot over any lengthy period of time with any company like that. Okay, so here are the 4 roofing success factors that I kind of talked about. We're always looking for good design. And I brought a sample here and I'll show you a set of bid documents to the extent that we go through when we're doing a roof replacement project. On a smaller roof repair, it's going to be a smaller condensed version of that, right? Larger rear roof is going to go through state plan review, permitting. It's a much more intense process, if you will. So we have to have great design. We want to have good applicators and good contractors. That's a hard thing in this day and age. Not many people go to school and say, I want to be a roofer. That's the harsh reality of it, right? It's a very, very hard trade. I'm going to say it's very thankless from the people that do it. But it's a very necessary trade. The good ones that do it, that are good, are in very high demand. So it's always a challenge to find good contractors that want to do things right. But we have to have that to have a successful project. Quality materials, obviously we'll talk about some different types of roof systems here. Very big picture, kind of generally speaking. We are a proponent of very long-term roof systems. I like multiply redundancy. That also helps the redundancy helps protect us against problems on the labor and the installation side of things. So it's a key component there. And the biggest one we feel is the regular inspections. Again, the regular inspections, when the roof's actually going down and people are doing the work, who is watching the job go down? And whoever is watching that job needs to have their checkbook on the line, for lack of a better description. They need to have ownership. If they have ownership, they take that more serious than if you do not. And those are the 4 things that we're always looking for. Kind of like the pedestal, right? If we lose any one of them or we falter, we have a chance for a failed project. So as far as the procurement process from start to finish, obviously roof problems, we talk about an inspection report, which we have completed. We've given that to Dusty at the district office, talked about that, actually done a few minor repairs already, kind of get you guys some of the things that we're showing pictures have been taken care of already, try to get you more towards a watertight condition, which has been a heck of a challenge this year. I mean, this has been one rainy season, unfortunately, but we're getting there. Hopefully it's going to start to dry out. With that, we establish priorities, and we have a priority map. We'll show you that, what the building looks like, where we see the big priorities being immediate versus long-term. You have a new addition, which is obviously in the back end of that, and then you have some older parts of the building that are on the front end of your priorities. Design replacement in detailed specs. This is a portion when you decide to move forward on a project. We're putting together a full set of bid documents. Obviously, the specifications has everything from insurance to permitting to bonding, a lot of the legal stuff that goes into any set of bid documents, and then the actual set of drawings goes together, which really lays out for the bidding contractors. Here's the exact scope of work. Here's the details. Here's what your job is to do. We're trying to take any of the ambiguity out of the project and say, here, lay it out. Here's the project you want to do. That way, any of the bidding contractors that get the work, you can assure the same end result. So that's kind of the goal of a super tight specification. And usually you'll see that on bid day. If you get, depending on the size and the scope of the project, you may have 3 to 10 bidders. It just depends on the size. If you have bids that are relatively close, and by that I mean, let's say within 10%, those are really good tight bids. That means the scope of work and the way they were looking at that job was consistent. If we have numbers all over the board, they're 50, 70% different, there must have been some ambiguity that we need to clarify in these documents. So the tighter we can get that specified, the more clear scope of work, the better bid results we're going to see actually on bid day.
So speaking of the bidding process, after the bid documents are put together, we actually hold a mandatory pre-bid. We invite all the bidding contractors in, we actually keep them in the same room. We run through the front end specifications, we run through the drawings, the bid documents, discuss the scope of work, let them go up onto the roof, let them measure, take pictures, look at the setup area. Really, we're trying to lay it out in front of the contractor so everybody knows what their responsibility is. That way they can't come back later and say, well, we didn't know we couldn't set up there. Well, it was established at the pre-bid, you knew that. So it helps minimize change orders and surprises once the job's actually won. But we always make that mandatory. We want them in attendance looking at your project. And my approach on that is if they don't want to take 1 hour to attend the pre-bid, then they're probably not really that interested in the job of doing it successfully. Typically give contractors 2 weeks between the pre-bid meeting. Bids come back, we hold a bid analysis. It should, between the bid analysis and the pre-job conference, pre-construction meeting is going to be the award. That's when, as a board, you have to look and adopt and accept or reject bids. It almost should always be low bid, unless there's some sort of a clerical mistake that does happen. Somebody makes, and they can show you a clear mistake. Say they're 50% low, then the next lowest bidder, and they can lay it out in front of you, show you that. There's no need to try to stick the job to them. They will submit a bid bond, but that does allow for exit of a bid during for clerical mistakes, right? The last thing you want to do as a district is try to start a project knowing the contractor's trying to make up lost money. That's not a win-win for anybody, right? They're looking to make up what they lost on an accident, a clerical mistake. That's not a win. In that situation, there's a good reason and they can justify it to be let out of their bid. Short of something like that, when they submit a bid bond, it's a 5% bid bond. Along in the documents is a payment performance bond, which is essentially an insurance bond or insurance certificate, basically that they will perform as the documents are needed. That's essentially what that is. We hold a pre-construction meeting. I always like to have their field superintendent at that pre-construction meeting. If possible, I like to form them. That doesn't always happen because the contractor does not necessarily just want to pull the foreman off of a job that they're currently working on to bring them time to hold a pre-con meeting for the next job. But at least I want the superintendent there, superintendent of school, buildings and grounds director, anybody that this project is going to affect, we want to have on site. The reason we do that is we try to minimize disruption or confusion when the job starts. I want everybody to try to be on the same page so they know what's going to happen and what's going to happen. Try to keep it as smooth as possible. Okay, during the roof, the actual roof project, the roof construction, we're on site doing routine inspections. Again, we do not subcontract that out. Being the liable party, we actually go up and do our own inspection, making sure the contractor is doing a proper tear off, making sure they're laying the insulation up, the new roof system, the details are all being done according to the bid documents. Okay. At the end of the project, we issue the warranty, and then from there, you're really in preventative maintenance. And really, when it comes to preventative maintenance, if a roof is put on right, it's designed right, you use great material, you have a good contractor, they put it down right, the amount of preventative maintenance that is going through the life of that roof should be very minimal, right? Yes, you have to clean your drains, you have to clean the scuppers out. There's stuff you have to do with HVAC equipment, but you should not have to be patching and repairing and searching for leaks throughout the life of this roof. If you're in that mode, this process was messed up to begin with, right? And so we're trying to get out of that cycle. So some of the existing conditions, this is an overview roof map, kind of showing your facility and the type of roofs you have. You have a few different types of roof. Generally speaking, here's the sample. I'll pass this around. You have single ply rubber membrane, and that is about the thickness. It varies in thickness from 45 to 60 mils. A lot of disadvantages, as we'll show you with the single ply roof. Case in point, by its name, it's single ply. You have one chance to get it right. If you miss it, you miss it. And in the time of a declining labor market, that's the biggest challenge, frankly. there's all types of single plies, there's rubber, there's PVC, there's TPO. They all have their inherent differences. The reality though is they're all one product. And that's kind of the biggest shortcoming of that type of roof system. So everything in green is adhered, meaning that the membrane is actually glued down to the insulation, fully adhered. Everything in the orangish color is ballasted, and we'll see some pictures of that. And that means the larger river rock, 1.5 to 2 inch river rock you see up on the roof, that's actually ballast to hold that membrane in place, is what that's for. And then you have your stainless steel metal canopy on the front entrance. So kind of a little snapshot of what you have. So some of the deficiencies, the rubber membrane tends to shrink as it ages, which is a clear sign that it's nearing the end of its life cycle. As it ages, it's like any exterior building component, a lot of oil, right? As it starts to lose its oil over time, it actually wants to shrink back to its original thickness, its original shape, and that's what you're seeing. I've seen it so bad at some points where it's actually pulling over the block and CMU walls, pulling over brick walls, where we have to, as part of a roof project, go in and remove the copings and have a masonry contractor reset block or reset brick before we can do the roof project. So obviously we want to catch it before it gets to that extent. This is one of the areas that has already been repaired. It's been cut and relaxed and reflashed to try to minimize that type of damage.
Yeah, before you move on to this one, we actually removed the coping cap. When it comes over the face of it onto that brick wall, we didn't have enough overlap. So the guys actually removed all the coping caps on this section and then made sure that the new membrane came out over the face to help prevent wind driven moisture getting in there, and then reinstalled all the coping.
So again, we can do some repairs in certain areas like that, extend the useful life of that area by some time, while other areas are being addressed at the same time. So it's kind of a methodical process to go through. A lot of holes, right? As that rubber shrinks, it's pulling on the fasteners, hits the sharp corner on it, on the sheet metal. It doesn't take much to actually tear and go. When it goes, it goes. A lot of pinholes. This gets very challenging when you're on the ballasted rubber roofs, right? Or any roofs that's got a lot of the big ballast on it, because you're kind of searching for a needle in a haystack. And what ends up happening is you have leaks and these roofs age, and you end up paying contractors a lot of money to shovel rock around and get on their hands and knees and try to find a little tiny bit. That basically is what modern building. So from an actual management perspective, it's a challenge.
So those pinholes are from the shrinking of it?
It can be from the shrinking where it tears on the fasteners, which we saw like 2 slides ago right there. You can see every hole is right where the sheet metal fastener was.
Yep.
So when they initially put that on, it was nice and tight in the corner. They put the sheet metal fastener through, they puncture that membrane. As it shrinks, that hole that they created kind of tears open. It can be something as silly as a mechanical contractor accidentally dropped my screwdriver, their toolbox. The other thing that happens on the ballast, we have some pictures here, but the rock ballast, I have them here. But it's like any rock, right? As it goes through thermal cycle, it falls, it breaks apart, and these rocks, what starts as a nice round river rock is now fibrous, right? And just by nature of walking on the thin membrane, you can cause some of the punctures on this too. Yeah, it can be a very frustrating process. You have a leak and you can never find it, and all of a sudden on the 5th try, the 6th try, whatever, they finally find it, right? And it can be a costly thing to discover, but also just a very agonizing one from the inside of the building, because where it leaks in the building, it could be coming literally 30, 40 plus feet away, right? It's in a metal deck or on a concrete deck, and it runs and it finds the next place to come. So it doesn't, unfortunately, just come straight down into the building. The seams are always an issue because when they lap the big sheets of rubber, it is chemically cross-linked, so they can't heat it up. They actually have to tape it. They have to either use seam tape, they use adhesives. So obviously, as that shrinks, that becomes an issue too. You're always chasing problems with the various seams. Different types of single plies, you can actually heat weld. The challenge there is, are they heat welding at too high of a temperature, too low of a temperature? Is it affected by wind, moisture, humidity? Presents a lot of challenges too. But we've seen a few of the different seam issues up there. Again, some of those have been repaired. There's another situation like that, right, where a curve goes up to a rooftop unit. Pretty common things that we would see on aging single ply roofs. Here's a pipe boot where you might have an electrical conduit or a line set for a rooftop unit. You may have failure there, obviously, as that ages. The adhesives or the tapes that they use just degrade. It's at that point in its life where you're starting to see those failures. And you have some older portions of the building where we actually still see the original clay copings. Obviously, a lot of these were made in Red Wing back in the day. A lot of them are still staying for Red Wing clay copings. They were the norm back in the day. I mean, if I pulled any of the old roofs from the 50s and 60s or before, they all had the clay copings before we actually started to adopt the sheet metal type copings. Obviously, every clay coping, there's different styles, different lengths, but about every 1.5 to 2 feet, there's a joint, right? So that joint is watered in. That water is going to be a maintenance issue that you're going to have to maintain. A lot of people, rather than bringing in a masonry contractor, popping those copings, cleaning them up, resetting them, repointing those, they end up kind of their backup is cough, right? So you end up coughing things. And it's one of those things, it's kind of find a good masonry contractor. That's equally is probably even harder than roofing contractors, right? Not many guys or gals. I have a few gals that are roofing right now on different crews throughout the metro and throughout southern Minnesota. Find people that want to lay block and brick, is a challenge, and that's a dying trade. I have a handful of good masonry contractors that I've come to rely on that still have the manpower that want to do the work and that do nice work, but they're far and few between. So a lot of times when we're doing roof projects, the state will mandate increase of R value, for instance, right? What may have been R16 in the 90s, now we're R30. They're going to mandate that in southern Minnesota. So we're going to basically double your insulation R value. Where that hits walls, if it's a brick wall that is made to drain, that has leaks, we have to come in and rebuild that through wall flashing. It's very labor intensive, very detailed work. And that's where the masonry contractor comes into play. So when we look at a project, we may have a roofing contractor, you may have a masonry contractor, HVAC, electrician, all these different trades come into play because of the new insulation. So a lot of things to look at. Clay copings in this situation, we almost always recommend taking them off, putting new wood block in the new metal coping. Every now and then we'll have a customer that wants to maintain the historical look of the building. Maybe a building element is well preserved, then we have to leave them. But unless it has a really, unless you really want to like to get rid of those, because they are an ongoing maintenance issue that just does not tend to go away. Here's another, you can kind of see a repair there, right? Instead of, you probably had a cracked coping, instead of bringing a masonry contractor and they just slap a patch on it. Kind of reactionary there, not necessarily the correct scope of work, not the right means and methods, but it did serve a purpose for the short term anyway. A little bit of vegetation growth on the roof, which is not uncommon, especially on the north facing wall where the sun can't get to it. That happens a lot. The thing you want to do on something like that, we talked to Garrett about that, is just cleaning it up, getting it off the roof right away before anything becomes rooted and actually starts to damage the roof. Early on, it's no big deal to clean it up and go away, but as it ages, then you start running into different problems. Very common. Here's an area of ponding water. And you know what I'll kind of say about flat roofs, you have a really bad connotation, right? Everybody says flat roofs in Minnesota, they don't work. And I kind of always say, well, you maybe just have never had one done correct. And unfortunately, flat is not technically dead level. Flat by code is 1/4 inch per foot slope. Now that's today's code, is 1/4 inch per foot. And a 1/4 inch per foot is actually very good slope. If you have a roof that has 1/4 inch per foot, after it rains, that water is gone. A lot of concrete, a lot of sidewalks are pitched at a 1/4 inch. They don't hold water, right? Before 1/4 inch took effect, a lot of the roofs were done at 1/8 of an inch. Even at 1/8 of an inch, a roof should drain very nice, and they do. Unless there's a lot of deflection with that, it will drain very nice. The problem is if there is not any oversight, tapered insulation is how we accomplish it. You either have structural slope where your facility is built with the slope into it, or we use tapered insulation to create the slope. Tapered insulation is not an exact science. It lays out on a computer just perfectly. Yep, that should work just right. The problem is there's deflection there. Buildings are not built. Buildings, as they age, they settle and things change, right? So in the field, when you're installing a tapered insulation system, you need that oversight to say, no, that's a low area that's going to pond. We need to add fill here. We need to add fill here to make sure that we don't end up with that. And that's a situation where they get a tapered insulation system. It's slope good to the middle, but they didn't put the appropriate, what I call crickets, as additional tapered insulation to move to the drains. And again, that's just kind of an oversight. When we're talking about those 4 pillars, there's nobody watching the contractor put that on. And that's kind of one of the shortcomings. Similar situation here. This is actually on your newer addition side. And it amazes me because when I go around, I see a lot of schools. Sometimes the newer buildings are oftentimes the worst. And these aren't bad by any means, but there's mistakes that were never caught, right? And that is part of, I'm going to say that the construction, right or wrong. Things are built faster and cheaper than what they used to be 20, 30, 40 years ago. And we're living some of the consequences here. So this insulation is designed to taper both ways. There's a valley with what I call a cricket here. It was just undersized. The drains are not sunk properly, so that's why all of a sudden in the valley you have a lot of pond water. And that's just one of those things. A little under design. Again, probably you'd look back and say, well, who checked the taper drawing? Did somebody actually check it? And that was responsible for it. And then when the roofer was there, putting it up on, who was watching it? And one of those two things fell short in that road. Same thing here. 1 year newer sections, again, holding water after a period of rain. Positive drainage in general terms by the NRCA. NRCA is the National Roofing Contractors Association. They are quote unquote the unbiased party representing everybody in the roofing industry. Positive drainage means after 48 hours after rainfall, there should be no stain. Personally, I think it's very easy to achieve 20 foot. Even after 2 days, if you're still holding water, you probably had something done wrong in the original installation. In a situation like this, it's still holding water, not only on the upper roof, the raised roof, but you can see down below too. It's the kind of stuff that happens in new construction. It will probably happen. There's a million reasons. The roofer is always tasked with getting the roof on as soon as humanly possible in new construction because they want to get 10 feet in the building. They always start in the spring, right? They start digging, put footings in, and walls up, get the roof on so we can get 10 feet so we can start working inside. And the plumber's not here, that's okay. Put your drain right here, we'll make it work. Well, it doesn't work because it wasn't set in the right spot. And those are some of the shortcomings that just end up showing up on the roof down the road. So I definitely see more problems in new construction than in roof replacement, just because of the nature. There's so many different trades, there's so many people in the process that things just tend to get missed.
Is that kind of stuff under warranty usually?
Potentially, probably not, because here's what's going to happen. Whoever's roof this is, the manufacturer's come up and say, well, they didn't slope it properly, and that's right. This would actually fall back on the installment contract.
Sure.
Well, that's who it would be with, that did things incorrectly. The challenge with that is, one, you have to go back and find an installment contractor. I know that they're still in business, or if they're not. Roofing contractors come and go quite often, right? Companies get bought, they get sold, they change names. Somebody leaves a company, they start another company out. So you have to go back and find out what happened. Well, then they may have paperwork that roof that the plumber said, well, I can't do it here, but put the drain here. So, well, we did the best we could. So to go down that road, it's a challenge. When it's a severe problem like that, sometimes it's litigation, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you can get people to stand up for what they've done wrong. Sometimes you can't. It's a hard thing to track down. This is why we're such a proponent of actually watching this job when they're putting it on. Not coming around at the end of the project and doing the final inspection and saying, geez, everything looks great and the roof's dry on a nice sunny day. I want to actually watch them put that roof down when things aren't going well, right? When they're getting pushed by the mechanical sub, when they're getting pushed by the general contractor, when they're getting pushed by the owner rep. I want to watch them put this down. And when we pump the brakes and say, no, stop, we're not going to sacrifice the roof just to meet the 2-day schedule. And that happens all the time. I was literally having that just this last week at a project at West St. Paul. And mechanicals behind me said, hurry up and get the roof on. I said, we can't. This curve is not high enough. If we do it now, you're going to be ripping this entire piece of equipment out later. So we have to just hit the brake real quick here, get it raised up, then we can run it. But without somebody on site being your eyes and your ears, Actually, during construction, that's the kind of stuff that gets missed. And again, I always say it's somebody has to be there that carries their checkbook. If that were police, are they cutting checks to fix? Ultimately, that's the sniff test of who your partner is in the project. So few of those issues that we saw, low flashing heights. Again, when you're talking flashing heights, I mean the vertical transition of a roof. So as the roof cover your flat, it's going to go vertically on a parapet wall in the perimeter. It's going to go vertically up on the rooftop unit, on a high wall condition. Industry standard across the board, it's without a doubt. And this is when you're moving sitting at 6 inches. I'd like to tell you this is uncommon. It's extremely uncommon that I see this happen all the time. Again, one of those things that we catch during the process to try to avoid issues. A little bit of a failure here from the coping to the wall. Again, this is where one part of the building tied into the next. Probably didn't have the correct coping detail there to allow for some movements and expansion. This has been repaired, it's taken care of. A couple of the little things that we're seeing out there. Okay, so future needs, putting this map together, we try to keep it pretty big picture, high level, give a lot to look at here. Just kind of priority 1, 2, 3. Priority 1 being in the next 5 years, this is kind of what you're faced with. Priority 2, we're looking upwards of 10 years, and then anything after that really is not in your foreseeable future. We might put it as a priority 3, but frankly, it's past 10 years. It's an evolving process, evolving document that's going to change every year as we inspect it. So you can kind of see the areas that we're talking about. A lot of the repairs that were already done were focused over in this area. A lot of those pictures that we saw were this area. So we tried to do some repairs over here to maintain because more of the priority is over here on some of the other sections. Again, we can put together, and this is it can be a subjective document, right? We can look at it and say, yes, this is a priority 1 need. I can put all the priority together, but it doesn't matter based on funding, right? Again, I'm telling you, this is what needs to be done, but until funding's there, you kind of maintain and keep going. So budgets, we put this page together. I don't know if any of you've seen this. That kind of covers some of that page. There. So again, in this situation, we have roofing related work, we have HVAC work, and we have plumbing work. So a lot of the old roof drains are old lead packed roof drains. The last thing I want to do is put your roof on and then we have a leak in the pipe, right? All of your water goes through your scuppers and through your drains. It really makes sense to put a new drain bowl in and have this replaced. Most drain bowls, as long as they're accessible, are around $1,500 to replace with a new cast iron bowl. To me, that is very, very cheap insurance, and you're spending a lot of money to do roof upgrade. So we have a bunch of roof drains that need to be replaced, and then as far as the HVAC work, some rooftop units, different exhaust hoods. Again, when we're increasing that R value, increasing that slope, we've got to raise those up. So that's allocating dollars for an electrical and mechanical disconnect and reconnect as part of that project as well. That way, when it's all said and done, you have your current R value, you have a good slope so it drains, but we also maintain all the splashing heights. So when it's banked up with snow and slush, we don't have those. So that's kind of the standard that we're after. Obviously, this is a budget, has to go through the bid process like we talked before. Our goal is always to come in under what we budget, right? So we try to be conservative there. Depending again on the size and scope and the timing, we would expect to have 3 to 5 bidders probably on some of this size. That would be for sure what we would aim for. So, okay. So some of the funding, and kind of where I was going before, it really doesn't matter if there's not funds available to do it, right? So this is a big change for 2025. So if a lot of you you've heard the verbiage LTFM, I saw it, I think it's in your agenda to approve the LTFM budget. The old formula, $380 per pupil, time your adjusted pupil unit. And kind of even sound wrong, like one kid should get more money than another, but it is ranked based on age and grade. I guess I get the process, but doesn't seem right. But so adjusted your per pupil unit, your building age category, and you get your annual LTFM revenue. And that's what districts have been using to try to maintain the facility since its creation. Obviously, the challenge with LTFM is it has not increased from inflation, right? So what was created at $380 is not the same $380 now. And that was the biggest challenge. So there was an enormous push, a lot of lobbying going on to say, look, we need to have more funds to maintain our facilities. And the theme that came about was roofing is one of them. I think mechanical was out there, was also entertained. I believe maybe even parking lots. Things fell off the wayside, and the one that stuck was roofing. So the new legislation allows, kind of in the lower right corner, allows you to go above and beyond the $380 per pupil unit and spend and do a direct levy for the available funds that you can afford to do roof replacement roof maintenance. It has to be over $100,000 per site per year, which you clearly qualify for now. Okay. So that's the new legislation. Along with that comes a few things that need to be done. Just a little bit of a recap here. The whole mindset there is that if you weren't bringing up the $380 per pupil unit to do, say, a roof project, and you can do that out of a different pot of money, then it frees up that $380 to maintain the rest of your facility and put it into other needs where you have it around the facility. And that's where the popularity of that comment say, okay, yes, it's not increasing for inflation, but if we're not pulling the roofs out of that thing, we can take that money and put it where it needs to go. So that was the whole mindset there. Takes effect fiscal year 2027, so that's July 1st of 2026, right? So we don't even next summer, there isn't a full summer to capitalize on that. Get 2 of the 3 months essential to capitalize on next year's fiscal year, or summer, I should say summer schedule, if you will. Everything on the second bullet point, fund for projects that levy beyond the $380, right? Freeing up that money for other projects. On the third bullet point there, additional levy authority above 380, it is a new impact for taxpayers. So as a community and a board, you guys would have to authorize to do a tax on your taxpayers, levy for that funds. Okay. If we're act up into a bonding project, it does qualify for the 70% ag school tax credit, which is certainly popular in ag-based communities. I'm assuming you have a pretty large ag tax base, so that's a very popular thing. So they're not getting hit quite as hard as say everybody else is. But you cannot do that as a pay-as-you-go. You can't take that money annually and do it. It has to be through a bond payment. Is how that has to be structured to qualify for the tax credit. Okay. So just a few basic principles there. As far as the timing of it and the narrative, this is something that has to go into the Department of Ed along with your approved LTFM budget. The biggest part being July 31st, which is creeping up on us awfully quick here. You do have to have a narrative that explains the project, talks about when you're going to do it, describes the project, why it's necessary, talks about the scope of work a little bit, and then also includes the budget for the project. And that goes into the Department of Education when you submit your LTFM. So if it's something that the district is considering again for next summer, then time is of the essence to get the narrative put together, to get that submitted along with your LTFM budget. Now, it's not a complicated thing. It's a 1 to 2 page thing, but it basically lays it out for the DOE, says, hey, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's what we're doing. It's pretty short and sweet, if you will. So, new legislation advantages. The best thing is it's a new funding source. I work with a lot of districts that frankly just cannot get a bond passed and have an enormous amount of need. They now have the authority to lend for it. Right. So that's a great thing if you're in that position. Or if you have an enormous amount of other deferred maintenance that the 380 needs to be allocated to, you can at least take the roofing out of that. So you're not chewing up so much of the 380 on just a roof-related project. To that point, preserve the LTFM revenue for other facility improvements. Depending on the district, some districts are wrapping in a lot more and doing one larger project. You know, the more you do at a time, there is cost savings there, right? If we come to a school and the roofing contractor has to set up once to do half your school instead of 4 or 5 times, well, there's a lot of cost savings there, right? You're going to avoid inflationary factor. You're going to avoid setting up in the same spot to do a different roof project, the same, another year down the road. So there's some cost savings there. kind of bulk bid savings. Stops the inflation factor, which is been a pretty hard one over the last 5 years since COVID. Everybody sees that, right? And construction is certainly not absent from that. Stop future erosion of the facilities, the insulation, the deck, those type of things. Now, the disadvantage is it is a direct levy to the taxpayers. And that's something that the board and the administration has to make that decision to move forward with that. Public perception of that, how that comes across. The biggest challenge that I'm seeing is, or that I'm foreseeing, I should say, is how many of our districts in Minnesota that would do on a normal basis or a normal summer do projects, maybe it's 75 to 100. I don't even know if it's that many, but now all of a sudden every public school district in Minnesota has a units, and there isn't a lower percentage. So clearly the supply and demand is totally out of whack. So that's a concerning aspect moving forward. What is that going to do for ability to find people to bid your jobs? What is it going to do for cost? Obviously, without a doubt, anybody can look at that equation and say, well, it's clearly going to drive cost up, right? If there's only so many contractors and there's vastly more work to be done, the cost is going to drive up. So what impact is that going to have? I don't know. We really don't know yet. We saw that even with the first slew of LTFM dollars. When, before LTFM, everything was capital fund, right? Out of your capital budget. Well, then when LTFM came to be, it was like, my God, we have LTFM dollars project. For maintenance projects, everybody was trying to do projects because there's all this funding source. Well, there's still only so many contractors go around. They don't all of a sudden start popping up just because of the funding source. So there's a lot of challenges there. I think that is going to be a tough one to overcome. Plan review, that's a lengthy process right now. In fact, I did a plan review this year for Mankato schools. It was like 8 or 9 weeks just to go to the state of Minnesota. That's a long time. And that's after you bid the job out. That's after the school board has approved it. That's after contracts are let. Then we go to the state for plan review. All of a sudden, then you tack on 2, 3 more months. Well, now all of a sudden you add up this. I have no idea what plan review is going to take. I wouldn't be surprised if plan review is a 4-month process, a 5-month process. Because the state, I don't know, will they have the manpower, the personnel in here inside the office to actually handle all the plans coming in for review. I will tell on that too. They're already backed up really hard before this legislation. So after it, I will tell. So we would normally start bidding out probably in September, October. We would typically have all the public school work bid out and awarded by the time the holidays roll around. Certainly by worst case scenario, mid-January, everything, most of your contractors are secured for the following summer work. I think it's going to back up by at least 2 to 3 months. In fact, we're already planning to start bidding work out right at Labor Day for next year. So you have to work a long time in advance because again, there's going to be a lot of people after those labor hours that are out there in the market. So you have to get ahead of it. And that's part of the biggest challenge. So bid process, even from start to finish, when we're looking at that process that we do, from the minute that you make the choice to go up to bid, you have to advertise for a couple of weeks. You have a pre-bid, there's a couple more weeks by the time the bids get back. You review that, you take that to the next school board meeting for review and approval. That's a 2-month window right there, just to get your number back to where, okay, we have a contractor, we want to award the contract, and then you start looking at plan review. So I think you're going to want to be in that position where a job is awarded, worst case around Thanksgiving. So that then you can then send it into state for plan review. So hopefully by March, April, you have it back because they cannot start the job until they have that permit, right? And the challenge is, and I've run into this in the past, is when you don't have a permit, all of a sudden it's middle of July and you have a big project to do, but the state doesn't care, right? They do their plan review and they can do it in the time that's allowed. So it's a challenge. And I think it's going to increase the challenge, I guess, is what I want. So we want to make sure we get ahead of that so that we're not in that position. So kind of steps moving forward. Obviously, as a board, administration, as a district, you guys need better. What do you want to take the project? If you want to do it next year, if you want to do it in the future, whatever that looks like. If you're going to seek the bonding side of things to qualify for the tax credit, we recommend that you work with the district financial advisor for that. They'll help you guys set up the plan, what that looks like. And again, that all needs to be done because you have to actually advertise the sale of that bond as well for what it's worth. And then the big one right now is you have to update your 10-year plan and submit your narrative by July 31st. So for next summer, there is an enormous urgency around the state right now. I've talked to the state and their hair's on fire, right, this last couple of weeks of July because everybody's trying to run for this. I think there's a brief window of opportunity for next summer. Being that you can't start until July 1st, not a lot of districts are going to jump into that. Some are, but some aren't. Some are that are going to say they either have a project that can be done in July and August and still get accomplished by the time school starts, or they're going to be like, okay, we'll let them go during school, we'll go in the fall. That's a whole other discussion, all right? Roofing during school can be challenging. I've done it a lot. Sometimes very successful and sometimes very unsuccessful. And there's a lot of factors that play into that. But I think the majority of your districts that are looking at using this legislation are looking for the summer of 27, so FY 28. That's when I think the impact is going to be really big on the plan, the budgets, the pricing, everything. So as a district, it may be something you guys want to weigh what's direction there, obviously. And then the bid schedule. So those are the things that the district, I think meet with your superintendent, decide what's right for you guys. Do we want to do the project? What's it look like? What's the size? What's the scope? Do we want to try to do it FY 27? Are we going to go wait FY 28? And then the things kind of fall in line from there. There's a lot of planning and that. I have saying the new normal, I think, is kind of bidding around Labor Day for the following summer. That's kind of where I anticipate it going, which is a little crazy because you're trying to now ask contractors to bid almost essentially a year in advance. A lot changes in a year, but we can't wait till the middle of winter to get going. There isn't enough time to get bid out, get it back, get it through planning review so that they can go June 1st or whenever the school is out for the year. So I think that's about all I had. Thoughts or questions on that at all?
How long will it take to do that project?
Over 150 square. It's probably on the far side of 30-day project. Weather always plays a huge factor. Sure, so that would be about 120 days with this year. It's been very challenging summer so far, but even given a little bit of weather days built in, probably about a 30-day project on that. So you definitely have the window for next summer for sure. It's not that big and pretty bad. Yeah, I don't think you'd have to worry about going into the fall year. But that would be right. That we did that when we put in the documents. You clearly lay out the start time and the finish time from the contractor. Like, here's when we want it's available to start, and then we want roofing 100% complete no later than this date. Usually let sheet metal lag a little after that. The sheet metal is not really noisy. There's no order. It's pretty out of sight, out of mind. So for that to go into the fall of the year, not a disruption of the building. And anytime they would need to do material picks up onto the building, that's done either before or after school hours.
Two budget proposals, one was single ply. How many ply was the other one?
We had just the one for the multi-ply.
Just the one for the ball. That
Yeah,
how
yeah.
many? How effective is that compared to what you showed us?
Sure, here's a sample of it. You have the rubber sample. Again, you're talking instead of the single ply, you're looking at 5 plies, and then what I don't show on there is we like to do a gravel surfacing. That protects against foot traffic, protects against your toolboxes, against damage. That really kind of gives it a hard surfacing. It really is going back to the old school, what people call tar and gravel roofs, but they are not tar anymore. It's actually asphalt. And tar and asphalt are completely different animals. If you would, by today's standards, a built-up roof is an asphalt and not a tar anymore. But yeah, so very thick, redundant. We're talking life cycle of well over 40 years. So the approach is one and done, right? And when you look at a cost of a project, disruption to the school, obviously any roof project you do is going to be very expensive, right? You're going to have personnel, you're going to have equipment, you're going to have crane, you're going to have insulation. You go there, just do it the best you can one time. It's incrementally more to do it better than it is just to try to do it and get it done. And we kind of saw that on some of your past projects there. So we're a big proponent of that low life cycle cost of ownership for trying to put better roof on it.
That it was for the middle section or all of the red that you had?
Yeah, I'll open that up.
Mostly the middle section, like where we're sitting right now, it's J, L, M, and N on your priority map.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, I guess, on the board here, but those sections, kind of that middle area. Not the entrance, not the standing seam, but the low slope areas around it is what it's for. And again, there's already been some repairs done to the other side to kind of buy some time over there, keep those in good condition, while you can focus your efforts elsewhere. And then the priority map, when we look at that, that kind of shows obviously a lot of your new addition, right? In pretty good condition, that's a ways out. So this is very much a living document. You do a section, we change it, and you can kind of see where you're going, and then we can try to forecast from there future budgets, whether it's 1 year out, 10-year out, 10 years, whatever the case is. The biggest challenge to budgeting, honestly, is what is inflation going to do? Are we going to have I don't think anybody wants another COVID, but are we going to have material challenges, right? That presented an enormous supply challenge that did with every industry. And roofing was, certainly wrapped up into that as well. So we can budget for what we know. The challenge is what we don't know what that impact will be. So I feel good about these budgets for next summer. If we were going to look summers after that, then we try to put an inflation factor in there, built up maybe at 5 to 7%. I think it almost needs to go higher than that as of late, but I think last summer we actually saw prices start to flatten out. It was probably the first year I saw prices flatten out since COVID. They didn't come down, but they stopped increasing at an exponential rate. So that was a positive sign, for what we're having. Any other questions at all?
Yeah.
We're throwing a lot at you there. I know it's a pair of road segment, but
Let's get into discussion now, and like I said, we have money, some set aside here to, fix some of the more repairs, but it's coming at us eventually. It's like trying to be cognizant of that as we go through our budget. And, be transparent with the taxpayers about what's coming up next, and we're trying to push it along. It's a good thing.
I think the great thing about the legislation, it does allow you to stay ahead of things. If the roofs get so bad, like one thing we'll try to do is if there's good insulation there, we'll try to salvage that. And we'll have a unit price in the bid form for the contractor that say if they run into a little area wet, it'll be per board foot, right? Which is 1 square foot by 1 inch thick. So if they only have to replace an area that's 10 by 10 by 2 inches thick, well, that's all you're going to pay for, right? But we'll try to salvage that insulation. The problem is as you prolong roofs so far beyond their useful life and you have buckets everywhere, well, then you're at the point where you just tear all the insulation off. Do we have any bad decking once they tear the roof off? And we really don't know that until they start tearing off. All of a sudden, the replacement decking is extremely expensive. So the cost of deferment, although sometimes can be seen like we can wait, and anybody can wait, frankly. The problem is we don't know what the repercussions of waiting are. And all I know is the longer you wait, the more prices, unless we're in a deflationary period, are only going to continue to increase. And potential damage to the deck, to the insulation, is going to potentially increase as well. So I think it allows you to be more proactive and stay ahead of it, which is a very nice feature that a lot of districts just frankly have not had in the past. Obviously, you guys have any other questions, shoot them to Dustin. We're happy to meet with him or come and meet at a future meeting if you'd like as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, we're great. Yeah, I think, well, that's, as, working with, Ayers, they understand, LTFM, and the budgeting part of it, what those projects look like, what they should do. If you have any access to this report, we're meeting, so I think that's just a discussion item. Maybe after the meeting, we go to the facilities meeting, they kind of talk about it. We'll actually make a decision, and I think you'll have some Ayers information to go to it soon. That's the option, probably better to practically something, right? Yep. All right, thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right, we can jump to 6.1, preschool wraparound discussion. I don't know, maybe an update from, we have a small committee, do some kind of fact finding or gathering, and I think the main point of tonight was that, you know, we gathered a lot of information, I guess, and don't have probably a clear direction. I suppose this might was probably why I moved to discussion instead of action. If there are positives and negatives to both sides of it. You know, as mentioned earlier, about the preschool program and how we're approaching it or what's happening with it. I think that's a factor that we're trying to work through. Financial elements of it, you know, to the school and what it means. The spacing of, you know, what we have and how it works, staffing, you know, all of that pretty well laid out in the presentation that you gave, Amber, so thanks for doing that. So I think trying to make the decision at the right time is part of what we're, you know, trying to do and understand. I don't know what other kind of comments you guys have that we've kind of talked about, anything specific that you wanted to say.
Well, I think from my perspective, looking at this, there's no doubt that the board is very passionate about finding ways to make this work for everybody, especially the kids. I think that we're also passionate about making sure that we do this right, looking at our running situation. You know, I think there's demand for things like this, but I think we want to look at doing it right. I don't know how else to word that. You know, looking at the facts and the things that we've come up with over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and prior.
I think part of the issue is just the unknown. You know, this levy doesn't pass. We're looking at some major cuts. And so we start the wraparound program now. People leave their daycares and next year we don't have it. And then they're out of daycare. You know, then they don't have their spot anymore. Or I don't think any of us want this, but preschool is a possibility of not being at the school if we don't pass this levy. I mean, that's unfortunately a true possibility.
I know, I guess the majority of the board, we're going to fight tooth and nail and try to solve that because I think it is important. But with the unknowns that we're faced, both looking at our budget, because we know those numbers, we see those numbers. My bigger concern is what is going on politically from our funding from the state. That scared the heck out of me. Looking at, you know, we're looking at going for another $500,000 in our referendum class. Remember that I hate to say it, but what they're talking about politically, capital, that might not even be enough. And we can't control any of that. So I guess when I say I wanted to be right, that's probably a lot of what scares me is jumping into this, which there's demand for it. There's opportunity for it for I think everybody to grow and thrive. But with the unknowns over the next 6 to 8 months of the school, I guess I would wait to get through that.
I think we're not. Number one, we need to see how November goes. And not just for this part, it's for anything that the school goes through. And we're kind of dire right now.
Yeah, we've got a lot to ask for from the community too, between, you know,
Yeah.
the presentation we just talked about and what the phone has from that perspective. Plus the levy, for just operating, it can be a lot. So
Like-
Finding the right places to ask, I think, is the right thing to do. Like, I think kind of like you said, we've taken it upon ourselves to make a lot of changes the last 18 months, and lots of them not popular, based on transportation and buffer stops and how we approach co-ops and a lot of the things that are on the list, we'll go through later. All in the vein of trying to get to a point where we're, like most schools, not, overspending, things are working, and hopes that, we can have a little time to make different decisions. I just to say, I think we've worked through a few things, right? So preschool is one thing that had those numbers go up and down, and the last 2 years have been, I think, down over the, prior 3 or 4 year trend. So something that we've, I think, worked through within this committee was, how we work closely with the teachers that we have in the community to try to push those numbers to get back up. So we're not trying to weigh having preschool with having this program, for something that you said too, right? If we can push kids to get signed up for those programs, try to get to know them early and really, get them here early on, because I believe that once they get here, that's when they stay and they see the community we have and the teachers and the administration, and that's what makes them, so great last 100 years or more, I guess now, but, trying to, I think that's one thing we try to adjust from the discussion we've had is how we promote that a little more. Program, short term too, versus trying to allow them to do.
Yes, for me personally, I'm gun shy on throwing out starting new programs, without doing more due diligence and seeing what the different outcomes are. Kind of been burned in previous years, and so I just want to make sure that what we're doing is not going to come, and not that it's going to come back and backfire. I think it's a program that is needed, but it needs to be done the right way. So.
Other comments or things that you want to see, going forward? I mean, I guess like I said, I think this program gets lumped into everything else on the table, and we're going to talk about it. Number 7.5 as to, things that we're trying to work through as a group, as a board. So I can't promise it's coming off the table, but, certainly needs to be, like the rest of these. If we're going to make a serious cut something else because we don't get a levy, it's just one of those things we keep on this list of topics that we're looking for.
Really ultimately now the time to add things, looking at what we're going to talk about rounds. I think we would like to this point, we're going to know a lot more here in November. That'll help us hopefully set the foundation to do things going forward better.
And I think that as far as adding income or adding revenue, I think that it will do that, but also not enough at this point to warrant going ahead with something.
The last thing I'll say, this is very tough for us because there's a whole group of very passionate people in this room that are mostly here for this, and well, at least a portion of it. And it's not easy. Not easy.
Just again, like I said, so we're not looking for specific action, except that, I think we need to continue to work on fine-tuning, essentially what it looks like if it ever needs to happen, but also, implementing some strategies to, again, try to get the preschool program, a focus on getting kids there or figuring out what it's gonna look like.
Enrollments are back closer than.
Yeah. So it's the discussion items. Of the, the other specific things they want to happen out of it. I mean, we kind of have some orders of the board, like we always do. We discussed it and worked through it. Anticipate a report on it as we go the next year with updates. We'll probably maybe announce some category and things. There. Or if there are specific requests that we'll hear that we need to address, we can kind of do that and stuff that could take care of it as a committee. Okay. Okay. All right, that's what I have. We have a topic for tonight, so we will jump to other next agenda item. 7.1. Long-term facility maintenance budget, adopting school district fiscal year 26 LTFM 10-year plan resolution. I am not going to do this justice in terms of explaining it or talking about it. Dave, if you got any comments that you would like to interject, I will take them. This is a resolution we approve every year. As presidents we're discussing, you're required by law to fill out what those capital needs look like, potentially over the next 10 years. So you're always updating it. You talked about the changing legislation that can potentially add more funding to this formula. So projects on here, see listed in a couple different categories. Health and safety, remodeling projects, accessibility projects, other deferred expenditures. I don't see major changes to this document year over year. As the enrollment changes, that affects the number. And you kind of see on the statement sheet, the 380 that he was talking about. Basically we do about a $260,000 annual LTFM budget. With it broken out between those categories I just mentioned. So I think some of this money does roll year over year if you don't spend it all, which can be helpful in looking at big projects. But I think last time we talked, it was only between 100 and 200,000, which is the fund amount that's accumulated over the years, based on what's inspected and will come back each year. That's why there's discussion about having extra money available for big projects, because this doesn't always keep up with that and can't always accumulate that much money in this budget. There's a long time to get to the point where you can pay for a project.
Another thing I would add to that, Scott, is I know that Mr. Glossard and Garrett have met extensively trying to prioritize what has to be done, what can be pushed off, to try to keep this under control. As we move for the push for the referendum and some of that, we want that to look the way it needs to. And so they've had extensive discussions to prioritize and make sure anything on that list is something that's really the urgent.
Sure. And obviously this can be adjusted and get adjusted. Like I said, at least annually. Okay.
Nobody moves to adopt a resolution to adopt the LTFM 10-year plan. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's what we were looking for. I'll second. Okay, there's a second. Any second? Any more discussion? In the resolution, so I would do a roll call vote again for Independent School District 391 to adopt the school district's fiscal year 27 long-term facility maintenance. Andy. Aye. Nancy. Aye. Scott. Aye. Brian. Aye. Kevin. Aye. Molly, would you like to vote?
Aye.
Right, I would like to do is milk bids. There's two bids in your packet. One from Cisco Western Minnesota and one from Prairie Farms. Prairie Farms bid came in about 25%, 20 to 35% lower on different unit prices for all mills. So every two in front of us, and the district or the administration was recommending going with the Prairie Farms bid.
I would like to know, we have that milk machine down there with that whole base. I guess I kind of want to know why we're not utilizing that. I would think that would be possibility of some,
Salting.
yeah, I mean, I would think, I don't know, I mean, if there, I don't know why nobody should use it for once a year or two. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're doing the cartons.
Yeah, because I haven't heard it was a weight tractor or.
Right, there's issue with it, right, yeah,
Just get a little more information on it.
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I would have to assume, but I don't see it listed on there for bags, but I'd have to assume by the pricing, it's, everything is, like I said, 20 to, I don't know, 15 to 35% cheaper depending on what kind of animal it is. I have to assume that.
Right.
That's, it's not gonna change the bid, but it may help us maybe stop that or what is it?
Right. I mean, we have the equipment. Unless there's
Certainly a
reason-
question that could be asked.
Right, unless there's a reason to not use it, which would be,
I'll send an email to Scott and Husky so that they can find out an answer.
If that's something that we can make a motion to ask, contingent on that, because I would assume they have to have this figured out.
and that's fine, I mean,
I agree.
Yeah.
Or, that we didn't think about
I would
it.
assume that, yeah, we would have to prove this to me.
I don't know, is that possible to do it contingent on, or do we just stay with it? If we have to call a special meeting.
I guess I would advise the approve one of the quotes.
Well, I would assume if that one is lower than everything else, it's gonna,
That,
if there's bags, there's gonna be lower on those.
that would be the reason, it would be maybe an internal discussion about how we operate and not a discussion about the price.
Right.
For that meeting, I'm the same.
So it's probably going to correlate to that.
Yeah. Or, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure there's a year contract for these or not, if they find that almost year contract. If it's one,
Yeah.
so we would be looking for a motion to approve, Prairie Farms.
I'll make a motion now.
Approve Prairie Farms to the health bill. Okay, we made a motion and Nancy a second. Any more discussion? All right, seeing none, we can vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Preschool fee adjustments. I guess I just got done saying that we made a lot of decisions that haven't been popular, and there's another one that, you know, we're trying to keep pace with districts around us, and we also make adjustments to fees where we do have some control. Ryan kind of said we don't have control over state formula, but some of these things we do have control over, and we made a small adjustment, I think, to preschool last year, but have the bullets here in front of us, our $50 per month adjustment to each of the in-district and out-of-district fees. Or the in-district going to $250 and the out-of-district going to $300. There was some small discounts for other miscellaneous items that we're proposing, getting rid of. Some special categories, students are on IEP or have special needs, they're free. That we have to have them free. Scholarships, for salary folks. So we're just going to take it off the publicized rates. Just leave them flat between the increases and move forward with them.
On that preschool survey that we got back, the prices, the new,
Yes.
is, in line with the other local preschools that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, so Dustin did a survey of about 17 local area preschools, asking questions about pricing, age, days of the week, how they're structured, wraparound care, and how many are offering that kind of additional service. So one of the things that came about was executive percent. There was, room to be in line with other districts around us. I'm also trying to close that gap of somebody else on budget. All right, any other, I look for a motion, obviously to adjust the fees as stated and as I presented for preschool adjusted fees.
I'll make a motion to approve the, proposed preschool fee adjustments.
Kevin will second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, approval of MREA membership. This is the group that school utilizes for information law related to legislative changes. So it's just the membership school. 1 year, it's $1,801. And I do a lot of interpretation. Obviously not, I don't think it's a legal sensible interpretation, but policy interpretation with changes that happened legislatively, how they affect us. It's something we've done for quite a while, and Dr. Gill is a really good resource for the administrative team and the board.
They're pretty vocal of their legislative committees and stuff too for education and
Sure. Base fee plus $1 per AP is some of the $100 that's weird.
it's just a one.
Yes, it is, right, yeah. So, any other, get a look for a motion to approve that membership or discussion? Aaron made a motion, there's second. Any other discussion? You were going to give us an update or give the board an update annually to it, what they've accomplished and what they're working on the next year or as we go throughout the year. So they can see the notes adjust in that. All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 7.5, proposed potential budget reduction. Ideas if operating levy fails. Talked a lot about these, I think, last year. Not all of them, probably only a select few, but we've moved through adjusting quite a bit like we talked about last year and want to make sure, take an opportunity to talk through what is on the list or things we've had discussions about, in committee meetings or with the community that are things that, if necessary, to be on the list to be trimmed. So I just, I'm going to read the list. If you have any comments about anything specific, certainly speak up, but some of the ideas of things that, may take adjustments or need adjustments. Again, if we are unable to pass any kind of operating levy, preschool transportation, talk about that. I think this month at our work session, a substantial amount to transport kids in the middle of the day, when we've got multiple programs running. So again, that was kind of the wraparound care discussion. If there was an opportunity to not transport kids, that's savings fine with the program. But And I don't think I remember the number, the range, it was like 25 to 50,000. It's a big investment and it's, you know, it's needed to get some kids here, right? Some kids aren't gonna get here unless they have transportation in the middle of the day, you know, we understand that. And so, again, that combined with the preschool program in general, numbers, how it looks, lots of positives, you know, to the program too, and it costs money to have a good program like anything, and so something that's on the table, electives, art, elementary music, facts, family and consumer science, aid programs, band, Spanish, you know, all programs that aren't required by state law to, you know, have to be offered, but certainly, you know, in a small school, being able to offer all of this is pretty nice. And we've been able to offer a lot of them for a long time. We've, you know, just kind of brought the facts back in the last 5 years. And it, you know, it's got a lot of things that, you know, kids don't get talking in a regular class about right life and common sense. And it's an awesome class to have, but also not required. And so when it comes down to required, not required, those kind of things are, you know, get lumped into the list of potential. Transportation for athletic co-ops, athletic co-ops themselves in general. We got heavy involvement in cross country, but it's a co-op that we utilize, and it's been great for the kids who've used it. It's grown. We've got a lot of great athletes in a program like that, you know. But it is a co-op, and we invest a lot of money into it. There are obviously others, but then, you know, it's just those are all together in terms of how we fund those, how much effort we put into them, and where the funds come from. They were. You guys ready to have comments about anything specifically? Go ahead and chime in. We're going eliminate bus pickup. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I said that and I jumped off. I jumped all over you. Eliminate bus pickup within 1 to 2 miles from the school. And again, it's not something we would like to do. You know, but if it comes to picking and choosing what transportation benefits the most kids in the district, you know, that's an option that's on the table. Additional transportation cluster pickups, we've done that last year. On the long drives, you know, put in place cluster stops for families who are in a specific area, able to meet and utilize. I think they actually work pretty good. And they're not important to meetings than getting a bus to your doorstep or, you know, probably close to your driveway. But again, it does eliminate a lot of up and down, you know, small roads, driveways that only have, you know, one pickup within a couple miles or couple minute radius. All right, quick about that. Anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, the transportation thing is big. Well, it doesn't matter whether it's kids or school or co-ops. I mean, my opinion, you know, the co-op thing, if we're not doing the practices here as a sport that we're doing at school, it's extremely expensive. We can't charge them for fees. There's no kids that would get it if we charge the appropriate amount of money for these kids to be in here. You know, I don't know if you've got more on your list or not, but I guess the reductions that we made at the end of the previous school year were awful uncomfortable. And they hurt in a lot of cases from, you know, what the students will feel and different things like that. That pales in comparison to what this looks like. This list will hurt if we have to do this. Not saying that it all has to be on there. These are all potentials, so it doesn't matter. When I look at these slide items that you got on your list there, Scott, there's just like one of them that's gonna be.
Well, actually, it was a program that's very hard.
We're talking program now. It's not a little bit here, a little bit there. Programs, and people. There's nothing good about it.
There are many more, so I'm gonna read them. You know, field trips, how those operate, you know, if we gotta charge fees, again, there's a lot of information involved with those. You know, I personally believe they are part of learning, you know, they are oftentimes important, a field trip, you know, being in the community at a place where you're supposed to learn, but also have to be any best behavior is lessons in and of itself, right? And so those are important. Ag events related to the new ag programs that we have, you know, potentially custodial or support staff, looking at a 4-day work week. You know, you don't probably save a lot in terms of salary on a 4-day work week. You've still got teachers that have to teach, but you know, if you can save on building and maintenance, utilities, transportation, other variable costs, again, that's potential savings there. community ed events, you know, Parade the Tree, Breakfast with Santa, Trunk or Treat, you know, those programs, they don't, charge for any of those things, and the community ed budget isn't a massive budget, and so you use some of those to engage the community and people here and see the value of the school, and what they also are probably nice to have, not being required or need. That was the list in its entirety.
So when you talk about the community ed, and I know that Dustin has approached the city about asking for a little bit more help from them. What about, asking Anders to have some of these events? Asking the bank, $1,000, whatever it is, to the Parade of Trees, or, there's, some of these things can be not passed on, but supported through different ways other than the school. Community ed is the community, which includes the city and the different businesses in town. And I think that would be one of the, community ed is never going to be able to support all the stuff. It needs to have that help from other ones. I think that reaching out to the community also gives more ownership to a lot of the stuff that the school has, more ownership for people. And more, I think.
For just all that, I think that's the reason talks about the list, right? Is yes, it feels very negative to run through all the things, but if there are good ideas like that we could start to put in place now to help others can fundraise or help with events that takes the the entire burden or part of the burden off the school to plan or execute or fund. That's just as good in the short term as anything else.
And I think it's been proven multiple times over the last couple of weeks even in town. If you have a need, just ask. People are more than willing to step up and volunteer their time or donate supplies, money, time. I mean, all these things.
And I think that's
They
a great
can't do it if they
suggestion.
don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. The recent talks with Mayor Don McCabe, they've been much more receptive, given, they understand our position financially and some of that. So I think reaching out, community, that is about the community, and maybe we can get some more community involvement in that way too. Could I get
And some of these items on here too, I mean, like some of the community ed stuff, yes, it does cost money, but it's not a large item that's gonna make a big difference.
Right. And
Start adding some of those up, that could be one program right there, or one teaching position.
right. I think the 4-day school day, 4-day school week. I hear of other districts that are doing it and absolutely love it. And have seen significant savings in utilities, support staff,
Food service.
transportation, all these different things.
I think food service or transportation are gonna be your big ones. You're still gonna have salaries. You're still gonna have your heat on. There's always somebody still gonna be in the building, so I mean, you tell you
Not as
a little bit.
yes. Yep. And I agree on the field trips. That's elementary school is boring without a field trip.
every time a kid asks us, hey, I'm going on vacation somewhere, I go, good. You're gonna learn a lot more in Arizona than you are sitting in the classroom.
Yep.
Those things are great.
And and again, I think families will agree and pick up those charges. Nobody wants to pay for those things, but they also realize that things aren't free anymore. But yeah, it's not a fun position to be in at all.
Okay, again, that's just a discussion item, so. Kind of have like a list of items that we're trying to have discussions about in the community too. There's been a why referendum or why the levy is important when it comes time to make a vote on it, and hopefully I'll see through. These are important enough to keep them vote yes on it. Just for understanding what we can and can't do if something doesn't pass. Right, I think we can jump into the section 8, which is board member reports. Anybody got any anything specific with that? And Dustin gave a nice update to me in the email. I can rattle off some of those points for his report, but I mean, some of that we've talked about facilities, meeting up dealing with the roof and summer projects that are happening. Summer too, with most of the staff are kind of coming back now. I saw some staff was sleeping, so if nothing else, that's okay. Principal's report. Did you have anything you wanted
Just
to?
a couple things here. Scott shared most of what's going on in the work session, so not a lot. Just to reiterate, as I think you guys are aware, you got an email that Scott did meet with the elementary leadership team, and they much prefer the 2-day elementary conference cycle. So Dustin and Scott decided, hey, let's not fight that. We can maybe talk going forward, but they're going to do the 2-day with the elementary conferences as we have in the past. I think you're probably all aware of that, but a lot of stuff going on in the building with elementary summer school, various activities, camps, etc. Just a quick, Garrett and the building staff are just doing a great job getting everything ready. They're really doing a super duper job. And Scott and I and everybody else is just getting ready for the workshops, and that's about it.
What are the workshops?
Workshops are the last week of August. Can't remember the exact dates, like 27, 28, 29, something like that. I could be off a day or two, but somewhere in that. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say.
Right, I'm just again give a couple of the highlights, talked about the building, and we got a couple projects with the locker rooms happening, and some work internally with some classrooms, and like I said, just generally getting cleaned up and like I said,
That is
we're
awesome.
going pretty
These
good.
guys are doing a great job.
Doing pretty well. All the fall co-curricular stuff's getting I guess going. I know it's all been communicated that after the meeting on the 6th of August. It's mandatory. You gotta schedule some time with Walker. But I know all the signups are out and all the information's out on the campus, so it's good to see and plenty of time to get the information out to people. Still within, I think, a few positions have been posted for coaches, volleyball, basketball. So trying to get those lined up to make sure softball, maybe for the school year, and volleyball, we just a couple of assistant coaches. Head and girls basketball still is open or still posted and open, and then softball. So hopefully those. Again, the roof presentation was one that we knew we were going to have. You have a little bit of maintenance budget again in that LPFM to handle small things, but again, not that whole project. So we'll have there. So preschool updates. Talking about, we touched on a little bit, Dave, meeting with the city. Actually, I think part of it we talked about community ed and how we can partner on that. But also a few things that maybe important to say. There's going to be some road construction happening. Anybody knows the names of the roads? Want to say them? Columbia out here, out to the south end of the school, and part of 6th Street. Doing some general road work and actually adding a sidewalk, I think, at some point to connect with the school sidewalks, bring some safety, but also some maintenance of those roads. Information on that specifically. Yeah, but back parking lot, or they're doing some potentially some curb and gutter,
All the way to Broadway, isn't it?
I think so. And I don't know if we have a specific dates on either of those projects yet. But again, I'm trying to, at some point there'll be probably flow disruption, have the school will communicate out as to what needs to change temporarily for busing and any of that. Nothing to be announced yet because it's not right in front of us, but it will be coming. So there's positive things that are happening around town that'll help make the area around school safer and better.
Do we know if it's happening this year or in the spring? Is it happening yet this fall?
It's like, I want to heard it fall,
So it's gonna happen relatively soon.
depending on whether.
So we try to communicate that as through our channels as best we can once we got actual details on the plan. Hopefully, that was most of the stuff on. It was. Somebody else got on the finish? Okay. Okay. All right, so our next work session meeting is Monday, August 11th. And it's 7 PM, or just the date change from the normal Tuesday. Next board meeting is Monday, August 18th, 2025, at 7 PM.
Make a motion with your meeting.
Made a motion,
I'll second.
7 seconds, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thanks.
Bye, Molly.
Thanks, Molly.
Bye, guys.
Glad you joined.